studying sometimes sucks. Working sometimes sucks. If being in the military and having things, blow up and getting shot at, that's a whole different level of suck.
Hey, Chris, thank you so much for the interview today.
Happy to be here, Rosie. Thank you.
Thank you. So I met Chris at AICPA Engage conference. So first and foremost, I know that you start from Marine, but could you share a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. So, I actually started out in a rock band. I played lead guitar in a band for 8 years. I had hair down to my butt. It was so long. Like how times have changed, right? So I went from playing a rock band. The band fell apart. Lost my girlfriend. I wrecked my car. It sounded like a country music song, but things in my life were kind of chaotic, and so what better way to deal with it than join the military? And so I joined the Marine Corps, and that was in 2001, the summer of 2001. Got out of boot camp in September, and I was home from boot leave when September 11th happened. And so I watched the plane hit the second tower, and I was like, okay, well, I'm in the Marine Corps, I'm in the infantry. This is probably going to be impactful to me. So I ended up driving across the country from Virginia to California. I got stationed in Camp Pendleton, California. And 2 weeks after I got there, I was on a ship sailing to Pakistan. And we ended up going to Kenya, doing missions into Somalia. We went from, good grief, Hawaii, Singapore, Thailand, Pakistan, Kenya, Yemen, Bahrain, Qatar. Where else did we go? All over the place. Australia. So I got to see the world. 6 months after that, I deployed again. I got to lead the 1st Marine Division to Baghdad in 2003. We were a mechanized reconnaissance unit, so we were in armored vehicles driving to Baghdad, getting in firefights, and did that for a while. Came back, deployed again. So I did three combat tours in my 4-year enlistment. But this is kind of where the accounting piece comes in. As odd as it is, I'm in Okinawa, Japan, and my commanding officer had challenged us to read this book, and it was called Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. And
I know that book.
That book is about accounting, right? It's about a balance sheet, an income statement, and cash flow. And it opened up this world to me that I didn't know existed. And so I actually deployed from Okinawa, Japan to Iraq. And I spent the next, good grief, 11 months in Iraq, shooting bad guys and blowing stuff up. And that last deployment was a little too much for me. It made me decide I wanted to get out. It was very costly. I think we lost like 50 guys that deployment. So
wow.
Yeah, a helicopter go down, killed 36, and then we had 14 people killed in firefights and fighting inside houses, getting blown up by IEDs and things like that. So I was fortunate to be able to lead 26 Marines on the ground in the largest urban ground combat operation in the history of the Marine Corps, which was the Second Battle of Fallujah in 2004. And that was challenging. And so I had determined at that point, I was like, okay, well, this is not a sustainable career for me. And so, I thought about, well, what did I want to do? So I ended up getting out, going to college and becoming an accountant. And I attribute that to Rich Dad, Poor Dad, at least for guiding my footsteps on the accounting path.
Wow. So now I'm wondering, the deployment period, did that affect a lot on even your current life right now? Like, you have any bad memories? You have nightmares? Something like that?
No? It's not now. That was, good grief, 19 years ago. About.
You look very young. You look a lot younger than your age.
So that was 2001 to 2005 when I was in the military. And so the real heavy stuff was 04, 05. I would say, after, 2005, 6, 7, it probably impacted me. But, as time goes on and you look forward to the future, right? I'm looking at the future. I'm not looking at the past. I have memories of all those things, but after time, you kind of forget about all the bad stuff, right? And you just remember the good times, right?
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
So when you came back to college, you probably older than other students in the class at that time when you take the accounting degree.
Yeah. I felt like I felt a little out of place. To tell you the
did
truth.
you have any issues about that? About the gap with other classmates?
No. In fact, I ended up marrying one of my classmates. So, my wife was an accounting student. She's a CPA. We met at we met in cost accounting of all places. So.
Oh, cost accounting is my favorite class. I like cost accounting.
Yep, I enjoyed it. I was a non-traditional student at that point. I had my own house, so I was commuting to campus. So yeah, a little bit different. I was there to get the job done, right? I was there to learn, get a degree. I wasn't there to party. I wasn't there to do all the things that kids do. On top of going to school full-time, I also had a full-time job. So I was working, 48 hours a week while doing, a full, 5 class load per semester. So.
Oh, wow. That's a lot. So did you work?
Yeah, I mean, if you can go, lead Marines into combat, you can work 2 jobs and go. You can work a job and go to school. It's not a big deal.
It seems to be a lot easier.
It's a little bit easier to deal with the suck of it, right? So sometimes, studying sometimes sucks. Working sometimes sucks. If being in the military and having things, blow up and getting shot at, that's a whole different level of suck, right? So you just learn to embrace the suck.
It seems to be easy for you, but it could be a lot difficult for people to have full-time job and then full-time student. And so, can you share a little bit about the job at that time? What did you do?
I was initially working at Lowe's, in their lumber department, slinging bags of concrete and 2x4s. So stocking shelves and things like that. I just had to work my school schedule around my work schedule. Unfortunately, Lowe's was very amenable to that. And so I would work go to school Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and I would work in either those evenings or all day on Tuesday and Thursday, and then definitely I worked all weekend. So it was some way where I was able to do school all day and then go to work, or I didn't have to go to school and then I was working. So it's a lot, because you're studying 3 hours, in the evening. You're going to school. You're waking up I woke up at 4:30 in the morning, and I get to bed at 11, and I did that for 4 years. But however many hours of sleep that is, 5 hours of sleep, that was twice the amount of sleep I was getting when I was in the military. So I already knew how to function at that level.
Wow. I know that my husband said during deployment, he can just stand and sleep because he was so exhausted.
Yeah. So wow. My deployments were, I didn't have a bed, right? I had to dig a hole to sleep in. So that's the level of deployment, early Iraq, where we're still invading, we're pushing to Baghdad. There's no bases, right? There's no, the bases that are out there now have baller trailers with air conditioning and toilets and bed and things like that. I was digging a hole to sleep in. That was my experience. So a little bit different. So, you're getting 2 hours, 3 hours of sleep a night. 4 is a pretty good deal, right? 5 hours is a pretty good deal, if that's the case. So it's just all about perspective, right? I had more perspective than other people. And that made the difficult times of having to work full time and go to school full time
But
it made that more manageable.
when
Hey, at least I'm
you
not getting shot at, right?
but
Hey,
when
at least I'm
you
not getting shot at, right? Nobody's trying to kill me.
at least, but thank you so much for your service.
Yeah, happy to do
It sounds very scary.
It's okay.
After you finish 4 years in Marine, did you have GI Bill for your college?
I did. And the GI Bill works great if you go to public school. If you go
Oh,
to
so
a
you went
private
to
school,
private.
yeah, so this is actually a good segue into kind of another phase of my life. So I went to the University of Richmond, private school, 3,000 students in the heart of Richmond, Virginia. Well, it's kind of right outside the city, but it's this palatial campus with a beautiful lake that has a nice gazebo in the middle of the lake, and the students have luxury apartments to sleep in, or some sort of townhouse. It's a very nice school. And it's like, I think now it's like 78 grand a year. I think when I went there, my last year was like 68,000. And so the GI Bill will only cover the highest in-state tuition, which was only like 25 grand. So I graduated with $100,000 of student loan debt. And so when I graduated, I went into public accounting full time. But I mean, when I started public accounting, I was making like $38,000 a year as a staff. And I had a mortgage, and my student loan was as much as my mortgage. And then at the end of the month, I didn't have any money to eat. So like something had to change. So I was doing public accounting for about 3 years. And then I had the opportunity to go back to Iraq as a private security contractor. So I was driving around in armored BMWs and Suburbans with like blacked out windows, carrying machine guns, escorting State Department government officials to government meetings. And I did that for 2 years, but the pay was ridiculous. The pay was more than 4 times what I was making as an accountant, and the first like 100 grand was tax free because I'm a foreign resident in this foreign country with foreign earned income. So I actually had some experience with this foreign earned income exclusion when I was in public at the beginning. And so I actually started a tax practice on the side when I was in Iraq. So there was hundreds of government contractors that are out there in the same conditions that I'm in, with the same tax consequences, with the same complexities, and they're all trying to find CPAs who knows how to figure it out. And I'm like, hey, I know how to do it. Well, I had a little tax prep shop in the desert for a couple of years, and that was kind of dipping my toes into being an entrepreneur. So that was enjoyable, great experience. And then I paid off my student loans after the first year of doing that. After the second year, I kind of situated myself financially, and then left, went back to public accounting. Moved from Richmond, Virginia to Northern Virginia, just outside Washington, D.C., in Alexandria, Virginia. And that's where I'm at right now.
Wow. Your life has a lot of different turns.
Well, life in general has a lot of turns, right?
Yes.
It's never what you plan it to be.
Yes.
Right?
But
Everybody
hang
has
on.
a plan until you get in the mouth.
Yeah, but I'm still questioning one thing. That walk me through how you end up with private school. Even I know that it's pretty, is a great private school, but talking about financial, it's not a great deal, and you have to work full-time job to make up that, and then you work so hard after graduation, and so because you work full-time job, you may not have time to enjoy how great school was at that time because you were so busy. Yeah. And so what made you choose that private school instead of going to public? Make your life a lot easier, and you can still work and then don't have to worry about 100,000 student loan after graduation.
Yeah. So, the university, there's a few. I was living in Richmond, Virginia at the time. There were a few universities there. I applied to all of them, got accepted to all of them. And so I had my choice. The University of Richmond, their Robbins School of Business, at least at the time, was in the, I think, the top 10, or somewhere in the top business schools in the country. Their accounting program was, I think, the number 7 accounting program in the country at the time. The majority of CPAs in the country were able to pass the CPA exam because of my intermediate accounting professor, a gentleman by the name of Joe Hoyle, who had, I believe it was called the Hoyle CPA Review, and he had the highest pass rate of any review course in the country. And so, when you're that successful, what do other companies do? They buy you out. And so if you use Becker today, you use the Hoyle methodology. So Becker was Hoyle's review course. Becker bought it. So he ended up having a non-compete agreement. When he got off his non-compete agreement, he started another CPA review course, which I think was called CPAReviewForFree.com. And it was just, him putting out test questions. The test questions he would give us on exams, he took all those and created this free review course. So students could, we used it to study for our exams, our intermediate accounting exams. And then I used it for 1 month and passed FAR with like an 80 something. So it was definitely a useful tool for me. It lacked some, at the time, this was like 2009 timeframe. It lacked some questions, like it didn't cover trust taxation. And so when I was trying to pass reg with it, I couldn't. So at that point I switched to Becker. So, but having one of my professors be one of the most influential people in the accounting industry in the 20th and 21st century, that's pretty cool.
That makes perfect sense now.
So was it worth it to spend that much money? Looking back on it, I think so. I could have gone to a much cheaper school, got it done for free and still got a job, and still maybe I'd end up where I'm at today, maybe not. Definitely wouldn't have my wife, because she was a University of Richmond student. But yeah, I enjoyed it. It definitely helped with my first job. And I think the university you go to is most impactful on your first job out of college. So I went to this small firm in Richmond. I think there were like 25 or 35 CPAs there. Most of the partners were University of Richmond graduates. So that definitely helped, right?
Yeah.
So that's where they were recruiting out of.
I see. And so talk about the first job. Can you share a little bit your experience about your first job right after you graduated?
Yeah. So I had an internship with this firm. So when I was working at a bank as a fixed asset accountant. At the same time, I was working at Lowe's, and I was an intern at the CPA firm while going to school. So let that sink in for a sec. That was when I reached my breaking point as to what I'm physically capable to do with respect to, cognitive, academic work and physical, labor and like office type labor. I reached my peak, so I had to let the bank go. I let Lowe's go, and then I was just kind of bootstrapping my way, trying to pay bills with the GI Bill, and then working as doing the internship with the CPA firm. So my internship was a tax internship, so it was January through June, so like 6 months. And so I was going to school and doing taxes at the same time. And then once after that, I just continued to work at that CPA firm until I graduated. So I worked there for a year before I graduated college. That firm, because it was so small and it was a full service firm, I had to do everything. I was doing bookkeeping. I was processing payroll. I was doing tax returns for C Corps, S Corps, partnerships, 1040s. I was doing audits, reviews, compilations. I was doing everything. That's really cool because you learn a little bit about a lot. right? And it makes you a very well-rounded person. And if I look back, that was a really good experience for me because I utilize all that stuff today as a business owner. And I'm able to help to be a better business advisor to my clients because I've had experience with just about everything. So that's really what I appreciated at that firm was I did everything. After that, I was like, well, I really don't like the audit work. I would spend like 2 or 3 weeks in January in this place called South Hill, Virginia, which is almost on the North Carolina border, kind of in the boonies, in this gas station, in like an attic of this gas station, freezing my butt off with all these old ladies smoking cigarettes, the floor below us. And it just felt like as an auditor, people try to make you as uncomfortable as possible because they don't really like you. It's like they just want you to get out. You're an inconvenience to them. That may not be true, but that's what it felt like. And I just really didn't like being away that long, doing that type of work. I don't know. I didn't like auditing. So when I went to the next firm, slightly bigger, but I wasn't doing audits. I was doing reviews and compilations, tax work. And then I started integrating more personal financial planning at that company. That's where I got my CFP designations when I was working there. And then after that, I went to another firm and I got rid of the reviews, compilations, and was just doing the tax work and the financial planning. And then I went to another firm and I got rid of the tax work and I was just doing the financial planning. So I kind of niched up, but I mean, that's a pyramid, right? You have a really strong foundation. And so now I'm able to work with businesses, their owners, their families, and I can identify issues and provide solutions that, maybe some people who are just more focused at the beginning wouldn't know. I think about my experience. I worked at RSM, large global accounting firm. There are people there who only work in a specific niche. Like they come in straight out of college and they are in their corporate, state, and local tax group, right? And all they work on is corporate, state, and local tax. Those people don't know how to do a 1040, right? They don't understand like how do you do a partnership tax return? What's the difference between a review, a comp, and an audit, right? Because all they do is state and local tax for corporations. So
yes.
I found that, but the benefit of that is if you're only doing that one thing, you become an expert very quickly, right? You see you're doing this one thing, but you see all the little nuances about it. And so you learn faster and you become an expert, subject matter expert relatively quickly. Whereas if you have to learn everything, it takes much longer to develop the expertise. And, maybe you really never become an expert at anything. You might just be a really good generalist. I think I might fall into a generalist category and leaning on the financial advice type stuff.
Yeah, I was working in private first, and then I moved to public and I work in audit, and I didn't like audit as well. Just the same reason. What's your reason? It was like it didn't feel like people like me when I visit their office. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, so that's part of it, but it's it's not just that they don't like you, but you're going through a checklist. Like you're just checking boxes, right?
Yes.
Like what value are you really providing? Like maybe they need an audit because they have the terms of their note. They have a loan in the bank. There's some covenant that they have to have an audit every year, every other year. That's the only reason they're doing it, right? They're not doing it because they want to create more value in their business. But that's where like the tax work and the personal financial planning comes in. It's all about creating value. Aside from the compliance, just filling out tax forms, but tax planning and personal financial planning. How can I create more value for the client than anyone else? And we're able to do that, and we can quantify that number. So,
yes.
if I'm doing tax planning, good grief. I remember I was working with one client. We went through like 12 different iterations of this plan. And he wanted it, if he did nothing, it would go this way. He was throwing out all these other possible scenarios, and we looked at all this thing. We're like, look, this is the optimal scenario. This is exactly what you should do because it produces the biggest after-tax, rate of return out of all these scenarios. So that's real money. I mean, that's quantifiable to him, his family, his legacy, for generations. And working with, I had the opportunity to work with some high net worth. I mean, and when I say high net worth, I mean high net worth people, billionaires, people with hundreds of millions of dollars. And when you're dealing with those people, just, a little deviation from the path has a tremendous impact over time. And it's not just, hey, we're going to save you $1 million a year this year, or, we're not just going to save you $10,000 a year in taxes this year. We're going to create millions or hundreds of millions of dollars of value for you over your lifetime and your children's lifetime. You don't do that with audits, right? You do that through consulting, business advisory stuff, personal financial planning, advanced tax planning. So that's really where I saw the most value, and that's kind of where I steered my career.
So when you work at ISM, when you start focusing on your niche, like you start narrowing what you want to focus on, how did you feel about your time working at ISM comparing with your previous places when you worked out like general background?
Yeah, so working there, that's a great company, great people, great organization, and I had a lot of freedom there. I left there as a manager. I had staff that were under me, but I always felt like I had the ability to say no to certain engagements. And working in their private client practice, that's really business owners, their entities, them individually, their families, right? Family offices, that sort of thing. But man, I was like, all right, well, I didn't really like doing business tax returns. I liked doing the individual tax returns. And I liked doing the 1040s and trusts and estates and gifts and things like that. So when people would want me to do business returns, I'd be like, no, I'm not going to do it. I can, find somebody else to do it. But I would turn that work down. And, I guess at that point I had the seniority to be able to do that. I had enough, reputation and respect among my colleagues to be able to do that. And I did it in a way that wasn't like, I'm not doing that, but like I would help find a solution. Like I'm not the best person for that, but I think I know somebody who is. So then I would just kind of manage the project, push that work to other people. And that's where I kind of got, I guess I was leading people before, like in the Marine Corps, but, leading people in an accounting setting, was at RSM. So I enjoyed that. I was able to then focus the work that I wanted to do, the credentials that I wanted to get, the CPE that I wanted to get. I took control of all that. I've always been one to kind of take control in the office. There's a lot of people that are kind of wish-washy about things. Nobody wants to make a decision. And I guess my philosophy is, in the absence of power, I will seize control. And so I would do that. And that would really upset a lot of people. I would get a lot of, hey, who do you think you are, doing this? Like, well, what are you doing? What's your solution? You're just sitting back doing nothing. I'm going to take the initiative to do it. And then you're going to get upset at me. That's fine. I don't really care what you think. I'm just going to make sure I get the job done. So I've always been that type of person. RSM afforded me that opportunity. Again, great place to work. However, they're I think the 5th largest CPA firm in the United States, maybe the 6th in the world. I think BDO is the opposite. But I was working 110 hours a week at RSM. I was working 6 a.m. to 11 o'clock at night, Monday through Sunday, and it was miserable. It just got to the point, and you know what it was? We couldn't hire anybody. We couldn't find qualified people to come in at anything other than like an entry-level staff straight out of college. We needed managers, we needed seniors, we needed managers, we needed senior managers. And those folks, with CPA licenses that had the knowledge, expertise, and abilities just did not exist. So then you just have to start grinding it out. And that was a little too much for me. So I had my first daughter. And I think when I got back from maternity leave, that kid didn't see me for 2 months because I went right back into tax season. And that caused me to want to pivot again. So I left RSM and I went to a regional CPA firm, about 300 CPAs. And I was managing part of their wealth management practice. So I had, a book of clients. I think I was managing around $225 million of assets. So I got my Series 65. I already had my CFP license, but I got the Series 65 license so that I could be an investment advisor representative of the firm. So I was managing money, doing financial plans. And the financial planning was really focused on, I consider myself a tax-focused wealth planner, right? I can't control what the stock market does, but I can control how much you pay in taxes because it's black and white, right? So I can manage tax brackets. I can do, if we do a Roth conversion, we're going to, recognize a benefit based on this tax rate arbitrage. If we put this investment in this tax deferred bucket, you're going to realize a better return. If you put this in a Roth, it's going to be better. If you put this muni fund in this taxable brokerage account, then you get to realize the tax-free benefits. So asset location, tax efficiency, that's kind of my focus. At that point, I shifted away from just the tax work in general and was focused on investing money and doing comprehensive personal financial plans that had advanced tax planning integrated through the whole process. Did that for 2 years and then had a bucket of money. I was on the national cryptocurrency tax team at RSM. So I was steeped in the cryptocurrency world and, had some investments there that also helped pave the way, along with, just my personal savings, to purchase my own firm. And so after that wealth management practice, I bought a CPA firm and I started my own wealth management practice to work alongside the CPA firm. And that's where I'm at today.